everybody off so much. I had people in my last live with you that were like, what is up with, they kept saying it's a fish. And I was like, it doesn't, what are you guys looking at? It doesn't look like a fish to me. I think maybe the background, the way it kind of goes out like that, maybe they were thinking that is a, I don't know.
Hold on, there we go. Made somebody a moderator to, sorry if it's disrespectful, I live in a country. Okay, maybe foreigner, I don't know. Tell me what country you live in. Anyways, yeah, well, of course they were doing that on purpose, right? Because weren't they in the army? Wasn't that, that was, I can't forget who that aggressively liberal was doing that a lot.
Yeah.
But,
and you can just ignore most of what he says because he just meant
yeah, for sure. And I wish he was here to say, or I wish he was there to hear that. Just now. Yeah. So, yeah, we keep pushing this back, and I almost pushed it back again because of family, and I'm like, I can't do that. I can't do that. Oh, they're in Genovia. Wait, is this for real? I've never. There are countries out there I really have never heard of before, and I thought I heard them all. But Genovia, is this? Am I getting played right now? It's a Disney movie. Okay, get rid of this person, then, please. Jesus Christ. Oh, hold on. All right, there we go. Yeah, so we just moved out of over. Robin, if you could just block them or whatever, that'd be nice. Yeah, we just sold our house, and so like I don't have anything to sit on anymore, and we're in the process of moving out. So.
Are you staying within the area?
For now, but we are looking for. Thank you. I am in the process of getting employed closer to the East Coast. So if that job offer comes through, then we'll probably leave Colorado. Not that I want to, but I do want to. It's kind of a, bittersweet kind of situation. But.
Well, I hope you get the job if that's what you want,
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and it is. I mean, it's much higher pay, and everything is just better. The only thing that might not be better is that it's in a more rural location, like a smaller town, right? That we wouldn't have access to a city that wasn't more than over an hour away. And it was just like right now we're 30 minutes from Denver. It's pretty nice, but the pay kind of sucks. So
yeah.
But yeah. So anyways, let's get into topics. Let's get into business. What do we want to talk about?
Let's see. You want to talk about Cuba first?
Oh, thank you, What the Buck. Yeah, sure. I mean, like, I think you and I are on the same page with Cuba. Is it, what do we need to dish out on that?
I don't know. What are your thoughts on Cuba?
Well, this whole last week I've been really out of touch with the world. So, I mean, if there's anything, no, I live in Colorado. If there's anything that has come about, I'm not really familiar. I'm not up to speed, if you will.
I don't think so. I think they're pretty much still on the same page with the protests and not much changes there. There's still no. I saw one video where there were people protesting because they had been out of water for 7 days. Biden imposed some more sanctions on them, but that was last week. That's pretty much all that I've seen in the news. Did you get a chance to ever see the interview that I did with Spanglish Generation?
I did not. I wanted to. That's when we really started ramping up stuff here. I was pretty much, it's such a daunting task to get your house ready for sale and apply for multiple jobs and still do your current job. It's like you have nothing, there's nothing else you have time for. But I wanted to watch that for sure. I'm sure it was very insightful.
Yeah, it's still up on, I think it's still up on Mute the Media's channel. If not, it'll be up on my YouTube channel too. It went very well. There was no political leaning in there at all. It was just very much speaking to somebody who's from Cuba, who still has family in Cuba, who is very passionate about helping the Cuban people and just what's best for them. And so I thought it was a very good, insightful conversation, especially because I had people in the chat that were very pro-communist, and then some that were extremely the other way. And I saw both sides of the coin kind of going, oh, wait, I didn't think of it this way. Oh, wait, I didn't know that. So it gave both sides something to really think about instead of just having tunnel vision on it being, completely the embargo. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, well, I mean, for me about Cuba, I don't really, I know everybody wants to say, well, the U.S. embargoes will cause all this. And I'm just like, that's not how any of this works.
Right.
The Cuban government, which was really just a military dictatorship, never had to operate in the way it did.
Right.
It just chose to, because at the end of the day, it answered to their own elites. And that's the thing, is like every one of these ideologies or what, I'm not using the word right, have an elite structure in them, and they just service them so much more than their own people.
Right.
I mean, why else do they have 5-star resorts on an island with so many people in need of gas and food and basic necessities? It's obvious to any outside looker looking in. And my thing is that our embargo never stopped. The embargo was very specific to say U.S. businesses could not do business, not in Cuba. They couldn't do business with the government.
Right.
And so I think people don't seem to understand that corporations can come and go as they please in many different countries with very little need to go through the government directly, other than to just do some basic checks and balances. The actual financial and business and operating decisions don't go through the government. They don't even do that here in the U.S., right? There's plenty of foreign entities that operate in the U.S., and they just have to adhere to certain business practices. But by and large, they're not controlled. The throughput is not controlled by the government.
Right.
And that was the point of the embargo, was to try and focus solely on a private sector in Cuba. But if the government just basically says no private sector, then there's nobody to work with. And that was how the embargo was written.
Right.
And so that was the onus was really on the Cuban government to be like, oh, well, okay, if we want outside people to work with our people, then we need to stop being the ones that control everything. And I know I put that in very layman perspective, but that's the gist of it. So I don't really buy in the whole embargo business, because it was simply written to avoid work with the government. That's all.
Right. And especially last week, the Cuban government basically opened everything up and said, well, bring whatever you want here. Bring, food and money and whatever. And so if there was truly an embargo, why is it all of a sudden now the Cuban government is allowing things to go in? So.
Right. Yeah, and so I don't know. At the end of the day, the regime needs to go away. They need to allow for the people to make their own decisions. And we've known that for a long time. You see it in the Cuban exiles over the last however many decades. You hear it from people like the lady you interviewed. There is a thing to be said about anecdotal cases that are real in almost real time. To have some credit to them. So, yeah, somebody was saying that I don't understand how corporations work with import. I do actually understand how all that works. That's not how this embargo is structured. This person got muted, though, so it's not like they can say anything in return. Yeah. Anyways, that's my thoughts on Cuba.
Okay. Yeah, it's pretty.
Oh, crap. Aggressively liberals here. God damn it. He can stay, by the way. Don't block him, even though he's an asshole.
He's all right.
Yeah, he's okay.
All right. So, what other topics? I think one other was the Trump lawsuit. Yeah.
So I have Corey mod me so they can't boot me. No way. No way, aggressively liberal. You're stuck. You better tread lightly, my friend. Just kidding. Anyways, Yeah, so much like the election with Giuliani and not getting any experts in the actual cases he was trying to push, he had zero election lawyers on his team, and none of the and why nobody talked about it, I don't know. That was gold for, or and maybe the Democrats didn't want to bring that up, so that made him still look like a fool without
Right.
pointing out the fact he had no actual experts on his team. So in the same vein with this class action lawsuit. None of the lawyers on this class action lawsuit have done a class action lawsuit before. And also, I wish I had taken notes when I watched this one lawyer talk on YouTube. I can't even remember his name. But he was talking in detail about how this class action lawsuit was structured completely wrong. He could have gotten the corporations on, and I forget these terms, so everyone's got to forgive me. But there's a term that specifies how, or an approach to the lawsuit that specifies how these corporations made a ton, billions of dollars off the Trump name, basically. And now that they no longer needed him, they just cut him out. And you know, there's actual case law that would back a lawsuit against that, and they're not even pursuing that lane. So they're going after this whole class action lawsuit without any real experts in it, and it's not going to go anywhere. It's just to gen up money for the Trump base, and it's not even. I wouldn't even say it's Trump's fault, other than the fact that he continuously surrounds himself with people that inflate his ego, but then are there to actually undermine him at the end of the day, so they can get a quick buck.
Yeah.
And he doesn't know it. He doesn't see it until it's too late. That's honestly why he constantly is kicking people out of his circle, is because he's so what's the word that the media says all the time? I mean, the man is very narcissistic, and they play to that to his own detriment. And it's sad because, I mean, I know people don't like hearing this, but he had some really great ideas for the country. He had some really good intentions, but he was always bringing in the wrong support network that were just trying to take advantage of.
Right.
And they would do, and they're still there is the problem. So, yeah, this whole class action lawsuit is not going to go anywhere. It's not going to do what people think it's going to do.
No, it's not going to do anything. Just like all his other lawsuits were frivolous and just wasted time and money. So he's just grasping at straws.
But the sad thing is that he actually has a case. They're just not pursuing it correctly, and it's my fault for not bringing the notes to this. I did again. My family was in town, but I will have to do it again. We'll have to talk about this again with some more defined notes, so everybody knows what I'm talking about. But there is a case here. They're just not doing it right, and so it's not going to go anywhere. And it's because he is listening to people that don't know what they're talking about. They don't know what they're doing. They're not the right lawyers, and that's really what's going on. So I'll get the details, and I'll even shoot them in. I'll DM them to you, so you can, or I'll link you to what I'm researching, so you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, I think it's worth that everybody knows, and I should probably make a TikTok about it. But
yeah,
whatever.
That would be a good thing.
Oh God, an ill prepared intel officer seems sus.
I wonder who said that.
I know, right? Crazy. I wonder who. Yeah, no. So what you missed out on, aggressively liberal, because you were late to the meeting, was that I had a surprise visit from family in town all day, and so no, there was zero prep time. So we're doing it live. We're just saying what we can remember. Anyways, so what's next?
Let's see. I'm trying to go over what we talked about. QAnon.
Yeah, so I did a lot of research on QAnon but early on when I finally discovered, like, what the hell is this Q thing everybody keeps talking about?
Yeah.
And the thing about it that I just wanted to bring up was that it honestly wouldn't have been successful if the media had not abdicated their responsibility so long ago. I mean, they really just opened when they vacated their responsibility to be trustworthy and to provide the actual news. And when the American people finally caught on to this, they just went elsewhere. and up sprang Q to answer their desire and need for information. And so in that way, I honestly, I blame everything on the media at the end of the day. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't think people should have fallen for it, but I can also see how it was extremely convincing for a layman, for somebody that doesn't really have critical thinking skills, which I'm discovering a lot of people don't have.
Right. And that's the bad part.
Yeah. So, I mean, I just wanted to kind of throw that piece out there that, had the media just been the media and not this propaganda machine for the left or the right, we probably would have never had Q in the first place to be so successful. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, the media did play a big part into it, but I still think it's up to people to do their own research to an extent, of course, as long as they know the right places to look for the information. But when you start reading articles and believing that, people in politics are lizard people and that Democrats are eating babies' blood, I kind of got to question your source just a little bit, so I just...
and I get what you're saying. The reason why that became so believable, and this is also why I feel like Q also was a team of people that were probably maybe supported by Russian intelligence, is because there are really, really well-crafted documents out there that look scarily accurate. There are images and video footage. I'm not talking about the lizard people, which I think is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
But like the idea that they're taking children's blood, and that the whole reason for all these for kids going missing around the world isn't just for sex trafficking, but it's also to literally drain them of their blood, and that it gets really deep, right? They talk about how like these derelict U.S. military bases, which do exist. We have military bases around the U.S. that are shut down. They're just not being used. But the conspiracy theory is that they're have underground labs, and they're fully staffed, and that's where the kids go to die, basically. And somebody took a lot of effort to draft really convincing documents that support this narrative. And I'm just like, who the hell has time for this?
Right.
They put pictures together. They put real people in fake situations and drafted really convincing looking government looking documents that related to these locations and what they were doing there. And the science data was all accurate. It's just that they weaved together this fiction. And I'm just like, there's like 50 to 100 pages of this stuff. And I'm just like, who is doing that, right? I mean, clearly somebody has an agenda if they are spending a lot of time to make sure this is extremely accurate.
Right.
Even though it's completely fantasy, even though it's fantasy. And so that led me to believe that this is like an intel psyop driven by a foreign state, most likely Russia. But yeah, that was the reason why they fell for it, though, right? Is because not just these Q drops, but these other little people, they would just plant these little seeds everywhere and watch them grow, and they were fucking convincing. And that was the problem.
But if they took any time to research it and fact check it, nearly everything that came out was easily disproven. There's a content creator on here, The Driven Progressive. His whole account was started to just disprove a lot of the QAnon stuff, and he has videos on his YouTube where he goes in detail watching all the Fall of the Cabal episodes, which is kind of like their Bible of the Q crap. And he stops and pauses and just goes and does a little bit of research that takes like 2 minutes, and you can easily debunk everything that's on there. What they do is they just take pieces of truth and sprinkle it all throughout this bullshit. So, because then it becomes like, well, maybe that's kind of strange, but then you find one little chunk that's true, and then you're hooked right back in, and you're like, oh, okay, this is the piece that ties all the other crap together.
Yeah, it didn't really help that there was somebody in Trump's media circle in the White House that was didn't think a big deal about this, right? And so they were literally planting seeds from Q into Trump's speeches or the background or whatever to fuel this narrative, because at the time nobody cared, right? Nobody, there was no big deal behind it other than, oh, they really think Trump's like talking to them or whatever. And so they fueled this even further. So you had that going on, and then you had this like probably secret, well-funded group creating fake evidence. And then so you do that enough, and and then once you show them the truth, it's already too late, because belief was, and bias is so powerful that even if you show them like that 1 + 1 = 2, they just won't believe you anymore.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and that's kind of where your friend was probably at, was he would probably show people like, this is why you're wrong. There's no way you can like disagree with me other than to just choose to defy reality. And so they would just choose to defy reality. And you see it all the time with different subjects, but yeah, that's how it happens.
So
they wanted to believe it.
I've got somebody in my comments that's saying there have been 4 different iterations of Q, and each is directly related to a singular emphasized theory. It's frequency illusion, Bader-Meinhof phenomenon. And it wasn't seated in if Trump capitalized words, they just brought meaning to it.
Okay, I guess yes. It's hard for me to follow if I don't see the text, but yeah. But yeah, and what sucks though is that they're somehow able to keep this shit alive. Like, even today, it's like they won't let it go. And I just don't know why. How much more evidence do you need, and how failed dates and everything else do you need? I don't know. It boggles the mind.
Well, now they're just, it's all about people not wanting to admit when they were wrong. There have been those evangelical priests or whatever that have been, shown to be swindlers, and they get caught. They have tape recordings and everything everywhere. That's how they're fed all the information, that somebody in the audience is dying of cancer or something, so they were frauds. They go to prison, they come out, and their followers still go back to them. They flock to them because nobody likes to admit, number one, I was wrong and I was fooled and I fell for a scam. So I think that's what it is at this point.
Well, that's how you explain socialism and communism. So, I mean, hey. So.
Okay. I don't know where
jabbing a little bit. What's that?
I said, I don't know where that went to.
I was saying, never mind. I was saying how people believe in something that doesn't work, or is not, or is a lie. And I was pointing at communism. But anyways, it was a bad joke. Sorry. Trying to improve the lighting in here, but I can't seem to do it. So what else? We got Q. And we'll revisit the lawsuit next time when I have all those details. But what else we got?
How about what are your thoughts on the January 6th commission with the Capitol police officers?
It's exactly what I thought it was going to be. It's just a way to sound bites and news articles and everything else to make January 6th more than it was, and to vilify Trump and the Republican Party, and make the DNC look so self-righteous. That's what I think it's for.
What do you think of the testimony from the police officers?
Well, I mean, to be honest, the only testimony I've watched is whatever I catch from creators. So I haven't watched it in depth, because the police officer that slams his fist into the desk, I felt like that was so so rehearsed. even if his speech was genuine, even if what he wrote up was genuine, I just felt like somebody told him, hey, when you say this next time, make sure you slam your fist into the desk, like, kind of thing. There was one that was saying that, or it wasn't even him. It was another creator out there that was saying this man was an immigrant. He did all these things, and then he got abused and attacked, and then he somehow tried to tie it to racism, the systemic racism and white supremacy. And I was like, look, I know what happened to them sucked, but they're police officers, and they stop bad things from happening, and they have to put up with really bad shit from happening at the end of the day. Whether it's done by Trump supporters or conservatives or Black Lives Matter, it don't fucking matter. That you signed up to protect whatever it is you were supposed to protect, and if you got beat up in the process, if you got abused in the process, that just comes with the territory. Go seek help, go get better, and get back on the line or find another job. And it sounds a little cold, but that's what you're there for.
Yeah, I mean, the police officers, to me, I thought they came off very genuine. I mean, if I'm going to be on TV and give testimony, I'm probably going to write down my words and maybe rehearse it just so I don't get nervous and don't misquote what I'm supposed to say. But I took it as being very genuine. When the one police officer was saying that, the Trump supporters in the crowd began to shout the N-word at him, I thought that was pretty, it came, his feeling and his emotion in there was pretty palpable. So I don't feel like they were rehearsed or they were, urged to say one thing or another. I mean, that's all theory, and people can make up anything they want. Again, that's more conspiracy. I have to just go with what they were saying, and pretty much all of them were all on the same page. So that's how I took it.
Right, but now would you say that? Would you take what they said about the people that were abusing them, or their particular situation on the events of that day, and paint the entire day or the entire crowd with that same brush? Would you do that?
Well, they didn't have the entire, Trump rally people there. There was about 9,400 people who stormed the Capitol that day. And that's about the size of a small town in some areas. But, I mean, and it was about 100 Capitol police officers. And all of them were in Trump, Trump flags, Trump hats, Trump shirts. There was no doubt that they were Trump supporters. Yeah, they were shouting, "Hang Mike Pence." I mean, they were there for one purpose in mind, and that was to stop the election, the verification of the election count. So,
right, but here's the thing. I already broke down the numbers in the previous video. It was far less than 9,400. It was more to the tune of 2,000. They've arrested less than 600 people. None of the charges were of sedition or of insurrection. Yet those are the words the media always wants to use, and so we know that's purposefully driven. They don't want to be honest. The activities that happened to those police officers are on center stage. Are they going to bring up the other police officers that were being attacked by Trump supporters and defended by Trump supporters? There's plenty of videos of that where Trump supporters are literally telling other people that were dressed in Trump attire to back the fuck off, and getting in between them and police. There were other videos of police escorting elderly people up the stairs as they went and toured the Capitol. At the same time, on the other side of the building, people were fighting. Are they going to talk to those police and get their experiences? I mean, just because an officer or a dozen officers or whatever were beaten up in a particular part of this event does not mean that was the entirety of the event. And that's kind of what's going back to my question is do you view the entire event of that day, the events that happened to them? Do you paint that brush across the entirety of that building and all those people?
If it was the majority of the people that were there, sure. I mean, it's just like saying, it's just like taking the narrative of 3% of Black Lives Matter protests were violent when the majority of them weren't, because the media doesn't show the peaceful ones, of course, because that's not what grabs the news. So one media outlet will show just those protests, and the other media outlet is going to show just the January 6th riots. So it goes both ways for sure. But you have 140 officers that day that were injured. That's a pretty significant number. And the number that I had, the 9,400, was what the officer testified that day.
I'm sure that's what the number he testified to that day. But the thing about these numbers and these approximations, and I've had to do this myself, being at the ground zero at the friction point of an embassy. I'm trying to leave countries out, but at the embassy that was about to be overrun by riotous individuals, and the number that I was able to assess was about 1,000. But when I got back to my computer the next day and they secured the area, the number tripled. And I was literally there, made the assessment and sent you my assessment, and you turned around and you inflated my number threefold to make it sound more dangerous than it was. And not to dismiss the fact that 1,000 was dangerous, because that was, but they tried to make it even more dangerous to the higher ups, and so they inflated my numbers triple. And so I feel like anytime anybody gives a crowd estimate, you have to be very careful about their accuracy there.
Sure.
So I just don't think it was
within the first few days of any incident. There's so much misinformation that comes out, but we're 6 months later now, so I would think that by now they have the numbers a little bit more nailed down.
I wouldn't. I honestly, I just wouldn't. I think that you could probably generously say that it was 4,000 to 5,000 even. But then somebody's still going to say, I think it's closer to 10, without any real justification. They're just going to do it because they can. And that's just been my experience with any kind of crowd estimation from intelligence sources throughout the federal government. So, because I cite my example because I was right there, but I've seen it happen on other occasions. One other thing, though, I understand the severity of the things that happened to those police officers that testified. I get it. But again, if we're going to start comparing things, I mean, and it was 7%, it wasn't 3%, but it was 7% that was violent, according to statistics. But that 7%, we can't equate that 7% of violence to what happened on January 6th and say that there is some sort of comparison there. It's all contrast, because the numbers just don't equate, right? I mean, when you have over $2 billion in damages, you have over 20 people dead, and you have countless shops burnt down, lives ruined. You can't really compare that to a culminating event on January 6th, where one person actually lost their life due to the actual activities of that day, direct activities of that day. The comparison isn't there. The contrast is, you can definitely point out the differences, which I just did, but there really is no comparing the two events. You can't really say, well, Republicans are all bad and because of January 6th, but then turn a blind eye to the 7% of violence that occurred over the BLM riots. They're just not comparable at all. But yeah.
Yeah. There were 50 who were charged with using a deadly or dangerous weapon or causing serious bodily injury, and 200 police officers who were injured. There are still some who are out on medical leave who have not been able to return to work, and this is 6 months later. So I just don't want to downplay that at all. I think what they went through was, even if it was 1,000 people, even if it was 2,000 people against 100, 200 Capitol police officers, that's a great amount. One was hit with a cattle prod. One person brought bear mace and was spraying the police, and of course we've seen all the other videos where they're hitting them with the fire extinguisher and hitting them with the flag. So they were greatly outnumbered. And, you know, what they went through, I think is going to take its toll on them probably for the rest of their life. But I definitely don't want to downplay or demean anything that they went through.
And I don't think that should be downplayed either. But I also don't think it should be hoisted up for the world to focus in on for political points. And I mean that goes back to my original point when you asked me what I thought about it. And they're just for political points at the end of the day. I mean, nobody goes and puts the numerous black store owners up in front of Congress to discuss how their lives were ruined. Nobody goes and brings up the families of the 20 plus people that were dead, that were killed during those riots, to see how their lives have been utterly changed and altered for the rest of their life. Nobody's doing that, right? But they should.
About people who were trying to overthrow an election, a federal issue. And comparing it to something that happened with private citizens on the private sector, which absolutely those should be dealt with, but that's comparing apples and oranges, in my opinion.
Well, apples and oranges should be compared, not necessarily compared, but contrasted, right? We should be able to cite and bring out their differences. I think that the one thing that people don't seem to understand about January 6th was that, with the exception of the violence, that was actually the right course of action. If you're going to bring your grievance to the government, that's what you do. You go protest. Once it becomes violent, then your protest is over. And so that's where they went wrong. But they can
past the protest at that point.
What's that?
I said, yeah, it was far past the protest at that point.
True. And another thing that people don't seem to understand was that the Capitol wasn't even evacuated because of what was going on outside. The Capitol was evacuated because the identification of those pipe bombs had been broadcast over the radio. And so the proper response, and an abundance of caution, is to secure everyone, no matter if they've isolated or located a bomb or not. They knew that there were some pipe bombs that those 2 pipe bombs are reported. That got reported immediately. And so what ended up happening, though, was that the media said, oh, these people were evacuated because rioters had broken into the Capitol, when in reality, and which was actually caught in testimony, they were evacuated because they were afraid that there were other bombs in the area. And I only bring that up because somebody wanted me to ask you that question, but I already knew the answer to it. So
one of my people in my comment section is asking, why do you keep bringing up black people?
What does it matter? I don't understand that question, actually.
I guess in your reference to trying to compare January 6th to Black Lives Matter, they're wanting to know, why do you keep comparing it?
I bring up who brought up the 3%? You had said 3%, and I had said actually it was 7%. Why did we even start bringing that up? I forget.
I'm not sure.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I honestly don't remember how we got on that contrast to the January 6th, but we did. I don't really remember how we started that. I just remember you saying 3%, and I was like, actually, it's 7%. But then we kind of went down that road. It's really not. I mean.
Oh, because 3% of the Black Lives Matter protests were violent.
No, 7% were. Why do people keep saying 3%?
Because an article I researched said that. And maybe it was 7%, but either way, it's still the vast majority of them were not violent. But if you watch the media and you read the newspapers, you think that they were rioting and burning down buildings and stores in every town, that there was a Black Lives Matter protest, which wasn't the case.
Right. Yeah. And I think maybe we had, because you and I tend to, get really detailed in our conversations, and we sometimes go down tangents, bring in extra data to maybe support an overall discussion. But the contrast is there to talk about if that's what the topic is. But really, I think the topic was the hoisting up of those policemen's experiences as propaganda, and maybe we used propaganda and brought in like the BLM thing. I don't know. It's really not that important.
What's up, liberal truck driver?
Sorry. Yeah, I just don't think it's that. I mean, it's not that important to the overall discussion. I was more or less focused on the fact that they were hoisting up these men who had traumatic experiences, but then trying to paint that entire them as the entire.
Well, there was one thing that both had in common: January 6th and Black Lives Matter when it comes to violence. A lot of it was initiated by right-wing extremists because if you look at the data for the Black Lives Matter protest, most of the time that it became violent, it was because there were far-right extremists who, either drove into the crowd or they were shooting paintballs at them. There's been plenty of that documented. And then if you look at the January 6th, there was a lot of right-wing extremists there. You have people with Nazi flags on or Nazi, symbols on and shouting, racial epithets at police officers. So there was definitely commonality in that.
Well, what you also had, though, was you also had far leftist groups starting things at BLM rallies. I mean, they were all doing it, and somebody even brought up the FBI, which is a valid point. I found quite interesting. This is, and I'm going to change the topic a little bit, but just to kind of bring it back to how the FBI is overly involved in some of these situations. Those 6 individuals that were arrested for the for the suspected kidnapping and holding hostage of Governor Whitmire. It turns out that in reality the group was 18 individuals and 12 of them were FBI agents. So at what point does this turn into hey, we stopped this domestic terrorist group to we created this domestic terrorist group and just led them along the way? Because everything that group did was instigated and led by these undercover FBI agents, which is why these gentlemen are not going to be charged at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. And all that came out during the court hearing or during the evidentiary hearings. And it's just like, what is the FBI doing all the time, constantly interceding themselves in these groups? It's one thing to collect information. It's another thing to try and get them to do something so they can then go and arrest them, especially if 2/3 of the group is the FBI. And I find that utterly ridiculous. And so I think what somebody was trying to point out here was that the FBI was also involved at some point or some degree, or at least suspected on January 6th. And to your point, though, there are all these groups that are just there. It's almost like they work together. It's really disturbing how there's some commonalities between Antifa and these far-right, these underlying far-right groups that just want to cause some sort of mayhem to stir the pot to get the rest of the crowd to basically burn the city down, if you will. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, I'm going to have to disagree on that one.
On what part?
Just pretty much everything you just said. I'm just going to disagree.
On the FBI thing, I'm not making that up. That's fact.
Well, it was fact, but you said then it was also presumed or suspected. So
no. The presumed and suspected in this January 6th, which is right to presume or to suspect it. I don't know if there's enough evidence out there, but I was using the Whitmire thing, which was kind of huge, as an example of how the FBI seems to be inserting themselves in various places. They did the same thing to Muslim terrorists, right? The guy that I forget who it was, but the guy that like parked the car in Times Square and it was like fuming or something, and they stopped it from exploding. Like in further discovery, found out that if the FBI hadn't actually told him what to do and how to do it, he never would have done it in the first place.
Yeah. Well, there's a difference between informants and agents also.
Right, but these aren't informants. Informants are civilians. Those are people. These are agents I'm talking about, actively causing these issues to occur. So so if somebody's making the claim that the FBI had something to do with or had an instigating point in the on January 6th, then then yeah, they should look into that and see if that claim is valid or not. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, that's the whole point of the commission, is to find out who is exactly involved in it. Was there any, maybe instigation or assistance from outsiders that we don't know about? And it could be left or it could be right, but either way, we want to make sure we get to the bottom of it, to make sure that, of course, it doesn't happen again, and that the right people get charged. There's a lot of speculation on both sides. There's a lot of speculation that maybe some Republican senators and governors may have had something to do with it. Supposedly Lauren Boebert was given tours the day before and tweeting out that day, like, the locations of where some of the Democratic representatives were in the Capitol building. So it's a little bit odd.
Yeah, so some people in my comments want me to explain why I'm not calling it an insurrection, and I made a whole TikTok about that, and it was in response to Change the System's response to mine. So you can go look for it, because it's like 3 minutes long. I don't really want to regurgitate as to why. Yeah. But I mean, people need to understand that a real insurrection would require an army of people, well trained, well positioned, in order to establish dominance and take over key points and sectors within our government. Not some ragtag group of a few hundred people that are just angry. Doesn't meet the definition of insurrection, actually. And I know people are like, oh, but the definition says this. I know what the definition says, but what you need is intent, which there is none, and you need evidence to support that intent, which there also is none. And so that's
which is probably why they went with conspiracy charges versus insurrection. Also, one is probably easier to prove than the other.
Well, right, because again, you need intent. The intent would be to overthrow the government in order to establish their own. That there is none of that exists, and you need evidence to back up that intent. So again, none of that exists. So yeah. I don't have a theory as to why the FBI would be doing these things, other than the fact that it justifies the further tax dollars that they get. In all reality, because they take the credit if they don't get discovered for what they're doing, and they just can go ahead and say, hey, look, we stopped this terrorist activity, fund us some more money. Then of course that's what they're going to want to keep doing. The thing is, the threats out there don't exist as large as the media is going to have you think they do. Like the whole idea that white supremacy is on the rise, or domestic terrorism is on the rise. All that is born out of an FBI report that documents 300 plus incidents, and out of those 300 plus incidences, almost half are done by people of color type extremist groups. The other half are done by the white Aryan nation. They're not even done by Proud Boys and 3%ers and Oath Keepers, because they're actually not causing any crime that was added up in this FBI report. And most of the crime is literally extremist violence. It's not even like terrorist activity. It's literally they just hate each other. But in order to keep America afraid, in order to keep the tax dollars flowing, in order to keep maintaining control over your daily lives, they're going to tell you that domestic terrorism is an existential threat, boogeyman behind the door, and here's why. But nobody reads the report. I read the fucking report. It blows my mind how nobody reads this fucking report and just accepts what they're being told. Anyways. Yeah. Sorry, I got a lot of comments that I just kind of, I don't know about you, but sometimes the comments just go, and I don't have time to read them. Like, yeah. I'm trying to pay attention to what you're saying or trying to get my thought out.
I'm just trying to catch up on some of the comments. Let's see. One person says, the liberal trucker says, I can tell you exactly why the FBI does this as far as documenting and tracking them. So they can step in before real groups step in to train them.
maybe. I mean, that might be a reason, not the reason. That might be, there's always more than one reason, right? I'm not going to dismiss that.
Terrorism doesn't specify a number of people. Right-wing extremists have carried out attacks that left at least 329 victims.
Those victims are usually extremists of the other variety. That's my point. It's almost like gang on gang violence, but it's just being framed differently.
Oh, I'm gonna have to push back on that one. I wouldn't call anybody who does anything like white supremacy to be anything close to what's on the other side. One is usually fighting.
No, I'm literally saying these are like
promotion, you know.
No. What I mean is that the violence that they bring upon the other people are usually people that are extremists of the other variety. So, black supremacist groups or
what people, black supremacist groups are there?
I would have to go look at the report again to see what they were referencing.
Yeah,
but they basically was. What's that?
I said there's none that I know of. I'm not saying there isn't one out there, but there's no black supremacy group that I've ever heard of.
Yeah, well, the closest one that comes to mind is that was in the report was that I'm going to totally, I don't even remember their name, but what they stood for. They were the Black Jewish Society or whatever. They were akin to the same group that was shouting down that Covington boy down at DC. It wasn't even BLM. I know people are trying to black supremacist group BLM. I don't know, but no, it was literally like this crazy, like they believe they're the original Jews from 2,000 years ago or whatever. But they view themselves as a superior race, superior group, and they get in battles with the Aryan nation. It's people don't know this, but it happens. That's what's in the report.
I want
whoa.
What?
Cut the language down. That's not called for.
Uh-oh.
Don't worry about it. I'm defending you. It's okay.
They can say whatever they want to say. If they want to come over here and say it, they can say it. Say it to my face. I don't care.
The Black Hebrews, I think, are who they were.
Let's see. I have somebody here who actually did the report.
Somebody want to... What's that?
I said I have somebody in my comments that read the report. I'm just trying to go through her comments here.
Okay. My thoughts on communism: it would work if we developed an artificial intelligence that took over all the minds of the people and put them in a commune state. That's the only way it would work. And Star Trek already did this by creating the Borg. Just saying.
Oh. Hebrew Israelites are not a supremacy group. It's a religion.
Yeah, well, their belief is still in that they are the superior race, and that they were literally fighting Aryan nation types. So, I mean, whatever. And that's the other thing. People want to avoid this, and I'm like, this is literally would be a root cause kind of issue that we could all be behind, because the Aryan nation finds its roots in the prison system, and the prison system, as we all know, is really messed up. And you would think that both the left and the right could approach this instead of using it as the next boogeyman or propaganda to maintain some sort of semblance of control on your life and tax dollars. Because I personally feel like there needs to be a new, not a new approach, but there needs to be some sort of prison reform, because the system is an ugly system, and it just creates monsters that probably didn't need to be created.
Okay. Can I address your video that you did about getting the vaccine today?
Sure.
That one kind of bothered me.
Okay.
Because while yes, there's not, because everything is still so new, I would say that there's not a whole lot of data suggesting that If you have had COVID and you don't get vaccinated, then you're, 100% protected. But there's also evidence suggesting that if you do get vaccinated after you've had COVID, it just gives you a better defense. It builds up your immunity a lot more. So I kind of had to push back against that. And I think everybody is not really talking necessarily about people who have already had COVID, but the people right now who have never had COVID and are not vaccinated and are not doing anything. They're not social distancing. They're not wearing masks. They're not staying home. I'm in Florida. The numbers here are astronomical. And everybody has that same mindset. It's my body. It's my freedom. It's my right. But you're not taking into account, that there's so many people who can't get vaccinated, who are immune compromised, or their children, because it's not quite ready for kids yet. I just don't understand. When did we go from being a country of doing what's best for everyone and looking out for our American brothers and sisters to fuck you, it's all about me?
Well, I don't think it's as simple as that. The French, again, the U.S. was first told, 15 days to stop to flatten the curve, right? Because at the time we were looking at a novel virus that was going to overwhelm the healthcare system.
Right.
And so the proper response was to try and isolate people, or it wasn't, I don't even know if that was the proper response, but the response was to isolate a lot of, all of America, and then surge support to hot spot areas, and which was what was done. And then these hotspot areas never really emerged, or they were never, or the ones that were emerged were never triaged correctly, right? Like New York City never used the military hospitals that were established. Governor Newsom in California thanked Trump for sending support, but never utilized it. And those really just kind of shows the limitations of the federal government and the state government as a whole. And then as we progress further, everybody was poo-pooing this idea that we could have a vaccine within under a year. They were basically telling the whole country and the whole world that Trump is crazy, because Trump was saying we could have a vaccine, and there's just news article after news article after pundit after expert saying, yeah, I don't think Trump's right. It's not going to happen. It's going to take more than a year. It could take 3 years. We're going to, whatever. And lo and behold, it happened, right? And then they don't put it through the proper FDA channels. They do it for authorized use. And that's, I think we're at that point now where you have enough people that have gotten vaccinated. You have enough people that, hold on. You have a lot of people that have gotten vaccinated. You have, in none of those numbers, you talk about natural immunity, right? They don't talk about anybody that has natural immunity. But as far as capturing of other numbers, you have these research papers that are coming out saying, hey, the naturally immune have a better chance against these variants. But they do caveat it with, more shielding is better, and these vaccines could assist in further strengthening them, but they're already more robust and stronger than the vaccinated anyways. Yet nobody's talking about the actual numbers, and everything I'm saying right now is true. I'm not making any of this up.
Mm-hmm.
And then what was the other thing that I just got sidetracked on? It was shit. Numbers, variants, son of a bitch. I can't remember what else I was going to say. And that sucks. But but anyways, we are at a point now, back to my video, that where it's like, life is a risk, right? That these people are not dying. There is not an explosion of death. The percentage is extremely small. It's generally isolated around people that are extremely unhealthy already, or immunocompromised, or elderly.
So
and I'm a survivor
I
of
guess
it.
just
And
not worry. Who cares about them, though, right? Is that what you're saying?
well, then they should stay home. They should protect themselves. Why shouldn't they stay home? Should they not stay home? Why shouldn't they stay home while the rest of everybody else that's willing to either risk
Do
their
you know
life
somebody
or is already healthy?
People who have diabetes are considered immunocompromised. People who are smokers are considered at risk. It really, I think what people's definition of immune compromised is somebody who's like, 500 pounds, or somebody who has got a plethora of illnesses, or somebody who's, on chemotherapy or something. That's not quite what it is.
Well, but here's the thing. Again, in my video, right? I mean, I'm extremely healthy prior to COVID. I get it, and now my oxygen levels fluctuate between 92 and 93%. I mean, I'm having a problem talking to you right now because I'm trying to catch my breath.
Yeah, I had COVID back in January, and I still have some lingering issues from it. I still get brain fog. I still have lethargy. I get shortness of breath, and I'm 41. I don't smoke. I drink, socially. I exercise. I try to eat right. Like, didn't have any health problems before that. Now I'm starting to have health problems. Now I have a thyroid issue. So I'm starting to get problems that I didn't have a year ago, and I don't feel the same.
Right. Right, but you're still alive, and you're going to end up living your life. And my point is that life isn't fair. It's not. It sucks. I mean,
but if you can take any type of preventative measures against this, why not?
But that was my point. Those preventative measures didn't work at all. Like I still got sick. My whole household got sick, and I was the one that almost died. It's
and you were wearing
going
a mask
to end up
everywhere.
Everywhere. I live in a pretty blue state for the most part. We were very strict about our what we did. And it didn't work at the end of the day. See, I can't. Jesus, this is hard to read sometimes, especially being in the Mile High City.
But see, that's the other thing too. A lot of people do recover, but they have, varying degrees of quote unquote long COVID illnesses. So that's something that people don't talk about. People are having heart problems. People are having, kidney problems and lung problems and all these other.
Right.
They're alive, but how much is that going to impact them moving forward? Because viruses don't really leave your body. You know what I mean?
No,
you
they
get
don't.
chicken pox when you're a kid. You can get shingles as an elderly person. We don't know what's going to happen to us in 10, 20, 30 years. Why risk it? Especially, why risk it for our children? We don't know what kind.
But what do you mean, why risk it? I mean, what? I don't understand this why risk it piece. I mean, what else are we risking? There's been hundreds of businesses that have been shut down, and their lives are comparatively just as ruined, but in a different way. I don't really understand why we need to seize our everyday life for something that actually happens all the time. We have coronaviruses on us now. They're mutating all the time. If anything, we want it to get through all of society as soon as possible, so it gets to a point where it doesn't hurt us the way it's hurting us now. I mean, the virus doesn't want to kill us. The virus wants to live, and we're seeing it literally evolve real time. They call these variants, but really they're just the natural mutations that any life would go through billion or millions of years of evolution. It just seems to happen here in real time because in one person they can go through a billion iterations of a mutation in one person. So extrapolate that to the billions of people on this planet, and you've already had the same type of mutations that, say, an organism or a multicellular organism would go through over the span of, say, millions of years. It just is happening in 1 year time frame. And you want that to get done and over with. But we're prolonging it the longer we keep denying people the ability to live their lives. And then what's even worse is that there's plenty of other assisted drugs out there that are being suppressed and not being used because it wasn't approved by the CDC or because they found a fault in a study.
Or because
the reality is
because they didn't work.
No, the reality is that there's no money in it. I mean, there's a lot of money in making sure people take these particular vaccines
The vaccines
and not
are free.
seek out any other supportive drugs
The vaccines
that are. What's that?
The vaccines are free. The government.
Well, we paid for that.
Well, the government.
We paid for
but
that.
We're not.
Yeah, the pharmaceutical company made $33 billion last year. I mean, that was largely off of taxpayer money.
So you don't think people should take any precautions as far as getting vaccinated? Because 95% of the people in the hospitals right now are unvaccinated. And most hospitals right now are at capacity in their emergency and ICUs with COVID people.
Well, if they do get overwhelmed, they need to seek out the assistance. That's what the infrastructure is there for. That's what the society is designed for.
If just getting vaccinated would prevent that, why not just get vaccinated? 99% that have died so far, I don't know in what time frame, but somebody just said 99% died were unvaccinated. So that tells you that the vaccines are working.
No, that's not a true statistic. There's no way that 99% of all those that haven't been vaccinated have now died once they got COVID. The virus doesn't get worse or more deadly; it just gets more contagious. I don't know who made that up or why, but
no use.
I guess the point is,
don't be making up numbers in here. No use.
But the point is at the end of the day, I'm all for people to choose. Like if they want to take the vaccine, go for it.
He said last month, 99% of the deaths were unvaccinated.
Of how many deaths? And in what article? What state? What are we talking about? Like what specific
of 100
of what? One person? So like one person. I mean, like 99% of what? Like one person. So one person died. I mean, like
He said a month. I don't know where he's. I don't know where his source is. I'm assuming it's going to be from a reputable source. No use for names usually has good sources. He's not one that comes with false information.
Yeah. Yeah, and look, I think the argument really is about, force versus choice, right? And nobody should be forced to take it. And everybody should just have a choice at the end of the day.
Just like abortion.
No, it's not like abortion because
everybody should have a choice.
It's not at all like abortion because abortion, you're literally murdering somebody.
I mean, COVID is murdering for people too, if you want to look at it that way.
No, it's not.
Oh, nobody's dying.
I'm not effectively murdering somebody if I don't get vaccinated.
Kind of are.
But I am effectively murdering somebody if say I was a woman and had an abortion.
I don't know, because at 8 weeks, a baby can't survive outside of the womb. So
a baby can't survive outside the womb at 9 months.
At 8, well, yeah, they can. At 9 months,
no, they can't. If I take that baby and lock that baby in a room and nobody goes in that room, that baby's going to be dead in a week.
Talking about my body, though. At that point, once it's born, somebody has to take care of it.
They don't have to. Why should they have to?
Oh. Okay. I don't know. Because you're saying we have to, I guess? Because you're not giving us the option?
Because it's a human life.
It's only a life if it can survive outside of my body.
But it can't survive outside of your body. Look, the abortion thing, you can go theologically to the extreme, right? If we lived in a perfect world and a perfect society, there would be absolutely zero reason for abortion, and so anybody advocating for it would be advocating for murder. It's the same thing, and I think you and I had the same discussion with regards to like the death penalty, right? If the system was perfect, and you could prove without a shadow of a doubt that this person deserved to die based off of all these laws and reasons, and there was no doubt, then they should be put to death. Both are not true, right? And so thus both have varying degrees of supportability and acceptability. I don't believe in the death penalty because the system, it fails. It's perfect. There's no perfection in the system, so thus there should be no death penalty. I believe that there should be some aspects, as much as I hate to admit it, of allowing the potential for abortion, despite the fact that you're taking a human life. Like, because none of these things are perfect. But if you want to talk from a theological perspective on without the reality of the world around it, yes, abortion is completely immoral and you're killing somebody. So,
what about what it does to the woman?
What about that?
Exactly. Nobody cares about that. Nobody cares about the damage that it does to a woman's body.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, there's
we have so many women in this country today that die giving birth.
Right. Yeah. And again, it's all about. I said in a perfect world, theologically speaking, it doesn't matter because you're still taking a life. But what you're inserting is reality, right? Is this imperfect world we find ourselves in, and so that's why you have that nuance or that unfortunate aspect of the ability to take that life. But you actually bring up another good point that nobody talks about enough of, and that is, and I think you'll appreciate this, is like when a woman gives birth, right, and the changes that the body has to undergo in a very negative sense, and there's nothing for that. Like, why aren't the insurance companies able to cover cosmetic surgery? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
To improve a woman's mental state and livelihood after, I mean, like that's a no-brainer, right? I know there are so many women out there that
necessarily a cosmetic issue that women have when they have
right.
It's
baby. Not. It's right. They frame it as cosmetic.
Well, no, a lot of times women have a lot of health issues after they give birth to a baby.
No, I'm agreeing with you. Yes.
What about the women who end up with postpartum depression and end up killing their babies and stuff?
No, that too. I get extremely frustrated at our current medical health situation, where things like postpartum depression or the diastasis recti that seems to happen to a lot of women that requires surgery to get fixed, and all that, none of that is like paid for. Like that's like, to me, that's like a no-brainer. It should be paid for. But yeah. So I would totally support that if it's not already being paid for.
And somebody came back with the 99% number was from Dr. Fauci 3 weeks ago, Meet the Press. And then somebody else said 99.2 was CDC data, and it was 18,000 deaths.
I'll have to look at that myself. But what are your thoughts on Dr. Fauci 2 months ago saying there's no reason for the vaccinated to wear masks indoors, and then now saying there's an absolute 100% reason for them to wear masks indoors? Like, how do you treat the constant flip-flopping just over the last 2 months?
I don't think it's constant flip-flopping. I think it's as they get more data, as the data comes out, because number one, this virus is constantly mutating and things are changing daily. So this whole virus was a virus that they had not seen before, and it was very new to them. So in the very beginning, there was a whole lot of unknown and speculation. And we still don't know exactly where it came from. We have theories, but we don't know for sure, right? But we don't really know why it keeps mutating. We don't know. There's a lot about it that we don't know. But when we do find data that comes out and says, when the data comes out and says, hey, this is what's going to work at this time, this is what we need to do, we really just have to trust science and do what needs to be done. It's just like every year we have to get a new flu vaccine because there's a new strain of the flu virus that comes out. Nobody questions that. They just go get the new flu virus vaccine.
Right, because that's why I threw in the FDA approval piece. There's a segment of the population that just simply wants it FDA approved, and then they'll gladly take it, but they haven't done that yet. Also, with regards to the masking up, why do you think that they haven't also advocated for people to, say, wear glasses or a shield over their face instead, given the fact that the eyes are just as dangerous a vector into the body as the nose or mouth?
I think because it's more contagious, or it's more easily transmissible through air droplets, through what you're breathing in. I mean, you're right on that. We probably should be wearing, masks and everything like that, by all means, as much as possible.
I did find it kind of strange. I read an article earlier today on the CDC that literally said there wasn't enough study to support the recommendation to have a face shield. Yet when I was at the ER, that's all they wore.
Yeah.
I found that kind of ridiculous that was the case. But
Well, I
whatever.
think probably too at the ER, they're in closer contact and closer proximity to people who are, extremely more at risk. And then, you have bodily fluids that are, constantly flying around that place. The average person is not going to be in the same environment as somebody in the ER. So.
Well, yeah, but again, I mean, they really should be promoting like an eye covering because, I mean, more often than not, people are rubbing their eyes and they don't even realize it. Do you know how often the human being touches their face to include rubbing their eyes on a daily basis?
A lot.
A lot. And so I just find it kind of ridiculous that we're being told or recommended to wear masks but not also cover our eyes. I just think if we're going to be serious about that, which it's already too late, it's been like a year we've been doing this, and nobody's really talked about eye coverings. Like a face shield. Somebody just said, laugh my ass off, what's an eye covering? I don't know, fucking glasses? I mean,
face shield.
Anything to block something from entering my eyes. Like, come on, I shouldn't have to explain that.
Yeah. Totally a face shield.
Yeah. So the response is I'm a joke. Really? Okay, dude. Whatever, man.
But then we have states like where I'm at right now, where the governor has literally issued out $1,000 fines to the schools if they force the children to wear masks. It's like, more than half of the population here is not vaccinated, and you are actually going to fine schools that are going against CDC recommendations. It's just getting ridiculous. But I think it all boils down to what you said is business is shutting down. It's all about money. So therefore money over lives is pretty much where we're at.
Well, I mean, we haven't reached a state where money can equate to like it would be nice if we all lived in a perfect world. That just doesn't exist. I mean, unfortunately, money has to flow for people to live. And so with that, we just need to take proper mitigating steps, which I think is what you're advocating for. But what I'm also advocating for is kind of choice and common sense. I mean, there's so much conflicting data out there that it can't be just centered around just the CDC as the divining authority. I mean, I've already used the face shield as an example, but they just haven't studied it yet to give a recommendation yet. Local hospitals already doing it.
All the hospitals go off of CDC recommendations. They literally, what they set their stipulations to.
Then so they shouldn't be wearing face shields then, because the CDC literally, as of yesterday, said they couldn't recommend doing that because they haven't studied it.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the thing is there is some common sense approach, right? I mean, like for instance, in Colorado, they're mandating teachers and adults and staff and whatever to wear masks and keep social distancing. They're only recommending children wear masks because we could all probably agree that children are not affected negatively by COVID. So that's why that true.
That's not true.
Well, that is true. No. I mean, like if you want to go on percentages, it's such a small number.
Not with the Delta variant. That's hitting younger kids now.
Apparently it is because the entire state of Colorado took the guidance and made their recommendations based off the data, and it's all voluntary. So
yeah, they're here in Florida. Most of our ERs and ICUs are full, and they are with younger people at this time, and they're all unvaccinated people. Or 90. I'm not
denying that. I just think we're kind of a little hubris to think that we can stop a virus from spreading simply by doing what we've done this last year. It doesn't work. I mean, it never has in the long history of humanity.
So you're saying vaccines don't work? Because I think we got rid of like polio with vaccines.
No, again, if I think there's a large segment that would get it if it was just went through the proper FDA trials and regulations. Just hasn't yet. And I will tell you, I think this kind of goes back to like the media failing their job, right? Because when you read up on how this vaccine actually works, it is it makes perfect sense, right? It's a different type of vaccine that hasn't been commercially available in the past, and but when you read up on how it works, how it sends the signals to the proteins to create a shield or whatever the hell it does, like that makes sense. But like most of the time, nobody's talking about that. It's because it's boring. But to me, I think it's extremely informative, and I think that it would help a lot of people ease their mind if they actually read these things or were told these things. So yeah, it is a little onus on the person to go and look it up, but I also feel like it doesn't help that the media doesn't do anything about it other than to strike fear and doubt.
Well, that's why you should definitely talk to your doctor and try to go off of the expert medical opinion. Even if you don't trust the CDC, you should at least have a family doctor that you would talk to, that you would trust. If you were sick with any other illness, you would probably trust your doctor to give you the best in medical advice.
Yeah, no, I agree. And like I said, I really do think that if this thing were to just get FDA approved, you'd probably see a huge boost in numbers. It's my opinion, but I wouldn't be surprised if that would happen.
And as far as like, immunocompromised people staying at home, I think most of them have stayed at home for the most part. And a lot of them are getting vaccinated, even if they really, are still immunocompromised. They're risking it and getting the vaccine. But you got to understand, a lot of those people have caregivers too that have to go out and have to take care of them. So they either have to work or they have to go out and get food and supplies for them. So in that sense, they're still the victims, because I have friends who work in a nursing facility. They were shut down. But the nurses that were coming in were the ones who were bringing in the diseases, because when they get off work, they go out with their friends or do whatever they're doing, and they get sick and then come into work. And they were spreading it to the elderly patients there, and that's how it was getting into the elderly homes.
Yeah, I'm sure. But look, like I said, I'm naturally immune to it. I think at the end of the day, it's going to be people's choice, and they really do need to seek out the right information. And you're right. I think they should be talking to their doctor at the very least. Because they should bring all this evidence. If they care so much about it, they should come armed with a bunch of questions for their doctor, but allow their doctor to ease their fears, I think.
Selfless service, right? Should be about selfless service, doing what is right for mankind. A lot of people, I think, just lack the empathy, and if me getting vaccinated is going to prevent the next person from getting sick, then I'll line up and take 100 vaccines. But that's just me.
Well, it is. I do find it quite interesting, and I'm going off of a tangent thought here. Two things. First, I do believe in medical freedom, so I do believe that it should be someone's choice, armed with all the information. It should definitely never be forced. But speaking of being forced, I do recall, and this will come a time. I think people don't. I'll get to my thought here in a second, but I don't think people realize that eventually this, whether it's this year or next year, this vaccine, right, will be a part of normal everyday life, much like the flu shot is. I don't think people want to hear that, but that's going to be the truth eventually. Once all the studies are done, once all of the doubt has been levied or been dismissed by longitudinal studies and the like, it will become part of everyday life. And that's okay. We have a history of this happening throughout human history. What I find funny, though, is when I joined the Marine Corps, right? And I just became a pincushion. And and you know, I got injected with so much shit that I just said, yeah, sure, whatever. I'll you know, I'm in the military, might as well take it. You say I need it, and I'm still here. So I just kind of wanted to share that little memory. But yeah, this will become a you know, a new part of medical treatment eventually. It's just right now it has all this nonsense around it. So, anyways, that was my little thought on that.
Okay. Just catching up on my comments, seeing if anybody has any questions.
Yeah, people are still arguing in mind about yes, no, this is what should happen, this what shouldn't happen. At the end of the day, it's just going to be about choice. I just don't think it should be forced. But yeah.
I agree. I don't want forced vaccines on anybody. But I feel like, you know, you have two choices. If you don't want to get vaccinated, I say you stay home and let those of us who have been vaccinated, let us go back to life.
But if those that were uninfected got infected, then they would be immune and everything would be okay then.
If they survived it.
If they did, which they likely could.
Why take
98%, 99.8% survival rate.
Why take the chance? Somebody does have a question. I'm just waiting for her to type. Let me see.
Let the unvaccinated people choose, and then nature can run its course. And of course, they think that everybody's going to die because they put natural selection and whatever. Yes, I mean, I don't agree that everybody's going to die, but yeah, let it happen at this point. Like, we have enough infrastructure to support a bunch of people being overwhelmed by it. If they died, then that was their fault for not getting the vaccine. They fucking know better by now. You know, it's their choice.
4,196 kids have developed MIS-C and 37 have died. What percentage of kids have to die to raise your concern? This was a question that one of my viewers has for you.
I mean, I never really thought about the numbers in that way. Again, it's such a small percentage, though, that, you know, more kids are probably dying in car accidents than in that particular statistic. And were those kids already immunocompromised? I mean, like, were they already
in
special situations?
Does that matter?
Well, yeah, it does. It does. It actually matters on like how they got the vaccine how they got the COVID in the first place. Because somebody wants those numbers.
Yeah, but when people say stuff like that, it makes no difference. They're saying these are healthy kids. To me, it makes no difference. I mean, it's almost like saying, well, they were already sick and they were going to die anyway. That's not necessarily true. An immune compromised person can live a long, healthy life. That's like saying, you know, you have a choice when you get a car to wear a seatbelt or not. You really don't. You know, if you don't wear the seatbelt, you're going to die. And if you don't wear a seatbelt, you probably
there's potential consequences to that. Yeah.
But if you know you can do one thing that's going to improve the chances of you not getting injured or dying, why not just take it? But why do you have a problem with those children? You don't have no problem with those children dying, but abortion is still, you know, all children's lives matter.
Well, no, because again, I think the details of any statistic matter with regards to making a very detailed and decision in how you're going to affect society. So it absolutely matters. The details matter. I mean, it may seem abhorrent, but they do matter on making a very educated decision. But then on that front, like, how many unborn babies need to die for you to feel sorry for the fact that abortion kills babies? I mean, like,
oh yeah,
Nope.
I'm
Nobody
not
seems to
saying,
care about that.
oh no, I think there's a big misconception that people who are pro-choice are pro-abortion or pro-death. That's not the same thing, because I'm against the death penalty. I'm definitely against that. But again, it's
right. But I'm
choice.
against death too, right?
No, because you're okay with people not getting vaccinated, and you're saying, you know, well, immune compromised.
But you can't draw a distinction.
Are just
You
immune
can't draw a difference
compromised and they
between
should
being
just stay home.
pro-abortion and anti-death.
Why not?
Because you're still killing somebody.
The life is not there yet, though.
Yes, it is. It's there. It is there at conception. Human life starts at conception. This is already agreed upon by the scientific community.
So in that case, we should probably outlaw in vitro fertilization, because when that happens, and there's unused embryos, right, that are fertilized eggs, that gets discarded and thrown away,
right.
Like that's the same thing, right?
It would be, except that they're not implanted. I mean, there are extremes, right, in that belief with regards to, okay, the egg and the sperm, life begins. Well, yeah, but if it didn't implant, then it's going to die anyways, which actually happens a lot that people don't realize. There's plenty of times where people have had sex and then have no idea that they started a life, because the life never adhered to the woman, and then they just got there. It went away. No, but that happens.
And women have miscarriages, you know, through whatever.
Miscarriage is a natural event.
Yeah, should they be arrested for that?
No, it's a natural event. It's natural. It's not murder. It's not. It happened because of whatever natural reason caused it to happen.
Well, it's not murder. You can't be arrested for murder for having an abortion.
Well, you're thinking of murder from a legal standpoint. I'm thinking of murder from killing somebody. I mean, you're walking into a definition fallacy.
Well, to me, a life is a life. If I happen to go into premature labor and I deliver a baby at 25 weeks and the baby is alive, and I, do whatever and I suffocate it and end its life, that's different. Now, if I'm 9 weeks pregnant and have an abortion, that's a different story, because there is no fetus that can live outside of a mother's body at 9 weeks.
We've already gone down this road. If you give birth and leave a baby on the floor for 7 days, it's going to die all the same.
Oh, somebody said, hold on, let me ask you something. Let me go back up. There are women in jail right now for miscarriages and stillborn. And I believe that something is in Texas that if women have miscarriages, they have to have some sort of documentation on it now, which is kind of crazy.
Well, I'm not arguing again. I'm not going to be for ridiculous laws that criminalize aspects of what women do. Again, are you still there?
Yep, my battery.
Did you hear what I said?
Yes.
Because you were like spinning. Okay. Yeah, I'm not gonna. I mean, if you want to go and debate individual laws, fine, but that's not really what we're trying to do. Also, our discussion keeps flip-flopping between the theological, right, of just abortion is murder versus the reality of having abortion in this imperfect world. So yeah. Okay, that said, let's wrap this up. I have got to go, unfortunately. I'm being pinged by the boss. So I got to go. Anyways, like either another topic real quick or just kind of wrap it up real quick. Whatever, how do you want to go?
I'm open to whatever. I'm looking through my comments to see if anybody had anything that I missed. I'm sure they did, but we can always bring it up in another time.
Yeah. Somebody said I'm stumbling. I'm not stumbling. I'm not at all stumbling. Either the topic is from a theological perspective. Thank you. The theological perspective of what a life is and what abortion does to said life, or from a realist perspective, as in we live in an imperfect world, and as much as I abhor abortion, there are unfortunate reasons that it exists. It's the varying degree at which we let that aspect of our reality exist. And thus you have to be careful about how you approach that conversation. That's all. So no stumbling there. But anyways, I had a comment because somebody's like, "Oh, he's stumbling." I'm like, "No, I'm literally just trying to delineate between the two." But okay. So anyways, this ass needs to go to bed.
I think you're in trouble.
I know. I guess I'm in trouble now.
All right. Well, on that note, we better wrap it up before we have a real murder on our hands.